The United States Heavyweight Championship became the primary singles title in the Mid-Atlantic territory of the National Wrestling Alliance, and would eventually become a mid-card title in World Championship Wrestling. We'll take a look at every champion that held the belt between 1975 and 2001. This video does not include champions in World Wrestling Entertainment after their U.S. Championship was reactivated in 2003. I'll explain more on that near the end of the video. Like other title lineage videos on this channel, this won't be a deep dive into every title reign. I call it a glorified list of champions based on what is officially recognized by the organization the championship is or was active in at the time. However, we will slow down and take a look at some interesting points along the way. I will add one disclaimer: when talking about longest title reigns or how many times someone held the U.S. Championship, I am only talking about this version of the United States Championship, as there were several others around the country. There is almost 30 years of history to cover, so let's get into it. As mentioned, the title was originally known as the Mid-Atlantic version of the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. The title quickly became the top singles title in the territory. The lineage begins on January 1st, 1975, when former world champion Harley Race was said to have defeated Johnny Weaver in a tournament final in Tallahassee, Florida. That was a fictional tournament, as you might suspect. Race held the title 183 days before losing the belt to Johnny Valentine on July 3rd, 1975 in Greensboro, North Carolina. Valentine's reign officially ended after 93 days, and a real-life history-changing event. On October 4th, 1975, Valentine's career was abruptly brought to an end when the twin-engine Cessna 310 he was on crashed just short of the runway near Wilmington, North Carolina. Also on the plane were the pilot Joe Farkas, Mr. Wrestling Tim Woods, promoter David Crockett, wrestler Bobby Bruggers, and the reigning Mid-Atlantic heavyweight champion Ric Flair. All 6 men were seriously injured, with Crockett and Woods suffering comparatively minor injuries. Farkas would remain in serious condition for 2 months and eventually died while still in the hospital. Bruggers suffered a broken back and never wrestled again. Flair broke his back in 3 places and was told he would never wrestle again, but somehow managed to be back in the ring less than 4 months later, though he did have to change his in-ring style. Valentine was sitting in the front of the plane next to the pilot, and also suffered a broken back, but a bone fragment wedged into his spinal column, forcing his back to be reattached with a clamp. Johnny was paralyzed and never wrestled again. Valentine continued to play a part in pro wrestling, including acting as manager in Texas for his kayfabe brother Dale Valentine, who would go on to be best known as Buddy Roberts. As for the United States Championship, it was obviously declared vacant. To fill the vacancy, a 16-man tournament was held on November 9, 1975 in Greensboro, North Carolina, which included wrestlers from across the country. Terry Funk defeated Paul Jones in the final to crown a new U.S. champion, but there was a humorous twist to the end of the tournament. Johnny Valentine had the U.S. Championship belt with him when the plane crashed, and in the chaos that followed, promoters never got the belt back. No thought was given to it until the night of the tournament, when the powers that be realized they didn't have a belt to present to the new champion. The belt presented to Funk you see in the photo used here is actually a Worldwide Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championship belt, provided by Blackjack Mulligan. Mulligan was in the tournament and was one half of the WWF Tag Team Champions with Blackjack Lanza at the time. Funk's first run with the U.S. title would be a short one, lasting only 18 days. Funk dropped the belt to Paul Jones on November 27, 1975, in Greensboro. Jones had a nice run of 107 days before he lost the belt to Blackjack Mulligan on March 13, 1976, in Greensboro. Mulligan had decided to leave the WWF and stay in Mid-Atlantic after the tournament, becoming the top heel in the territory. Mulligan kept the U.S. title 217 days, the longest reign in the championship's short history at that point, losing the belt back to Paul Jones on October 16, 1976, in Greensboro. This made Jones the first wrestler to hold the title more than once. Jones only held the title 43 days in his second run, losing the belt back to Blackjack Mulligan on November 28, 1976, in Charlotte, North Carolina. This was the first time the belt changed hands anywhere other than Greensboro. Mulligan turned in the shortest U.S. title reign to that date, holding the belt 11 days before he lost it back to Paul Jones on December 9, 1976, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Mulligan would file a protest with the NWA after the match, claiming Jones illegally pinned him, As it turned out, the NWA agreed, as Jones's feet were under the ropes and outside the ring when the pin was made. In a videotaped address, NWA President Eddie Graham ruled that the belt be returned to Mulligan, though Jones's 6 days as champion would be recognized, with Mulligan beginning a new reign on December 15th. Mulligan and Jones continued to feud over the U.S. Championship into 1977, but Jones failed to get the title back before leaving the territory and heading to Georgia in March. Mulligan held the belt into the summer, finally losing the title after 204 days to Bobo Brazil on July 7, 1977 in Norfolk, Virginia. The legendary Bobo Brazil held this version of the United States Championship 22 days before dropping it to a legend in the making. Ric Flair won his first United States Heavyweight Championship on July 29, 1977 in Richmond, Virginia. This was less than 2 years after being told he would never wrestle again. Flair held the title 84 days in that first reign, losing the belt to Ricky Steamboat on October 21, 1977 in Charleston, South Carolina. This was the very early stages of a long feud between Flair and Steamboat that went on for the next 20 years, moving from the Mid-Atlantic territory to the national stage, with both the NWA and WCW World Championship in the spotlight. Flair would usually come away with the belt when they face each other, with this U.S. title change being one of the exceptions. Steamboat also won the NWA World title from Flair in 1989 before losing it back to the Nature Boy. Flair and Steamboat faced each other for the first time on June 14, 1977 in a tag team match, as Flair and Greg Valentine defeated Steamboat and Wahoo McDaniel in Columbia, South Carolina. The two faced each other for the last time on August 21, 1994 at a WCW house show in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with Steamboat defeating Flair. Steamboat held the U.S. Championship 72 days in his first reign, dropping the belt to former champion Blackjack Mulligan on January 1, 1978 in Greensboro, North Carolina. And this marked Mulligan's fourth time holding the title. Mulligan kept the belt 77 days before losing it to Mr. Wrestling on March 19, 1978 in Greensboro. Mr. Wrestling only held the title 21 days before losing it to Ric Flair on April 8, 1978 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Flair set off on a long reign of 252 days, the longest stretch for a United States champion at that time. Flair dropped the belt on December 17, 1978 to Ricky Steamboat in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And this marked the first time the U.S. title changed hands outside the United States. Steamboat had a lengthy reign himself, holding the title 105 days before losing it back to Ric Flair on April 1, 1979 in Greensboro, North Carolina. Flair held the title another 133 days before he vacated the championship. Flair had won the Mid-Atlantic version of the NWA World Tag Team Championship with Johnny Valentine's real-life son Greg Valentine on August 8, 1979. Flair was required to surrender his singles title and officially vacated the U.S. Championship on August 12, 1979. A 12-man tournament was held in Charlotte, North Carolina on September 1, 1979 to fill the vacancy. Jimmy Snuka defeated Ricky Steamboat in the tournament final to crown a new champion. Snuka's only U.S. title reign was a long one, lasting 232 days, before Snuka lost the belt to Ric Flair on April 19, 1980 in Greensboro, North Carolina. Flair had a healthy run of 97 days with his fourth reign, finally dropping the belt on July 26, 1980 in Charlotte, North Carolina to his former tag team partner, Greg Valentine. Valentine held the belt 121 days before losing the belt back to Ric Flair on November 24, 1980 in Greenville, North Carolina. This would be Flair's last time around with the U.S. Championship as part of the Mid-Atlantic territory. Flair's star was rising, and there was another belt in his future. Flair feuded with Roddy Piper over the belt, dropping the title to him on January 27, 1981 in Raleigh, North Carolina. And during Piper's run with the belt, NWA San Francisco closed its doors, and that territory folded. San Francisco was the last territory outside Mid-Atlantic that recognized the United States champion, leaving the Mid-Atlantic version as the only active U.S. title. So, officially, we can remove the Mid-Atlantic version from the title's name, and the championship becomes the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. Of course, it was never referred to as the Mid-Atlantic version to fans anyway. Piper had a long run as champion, keeping the belt 193 days before dropping it to Wahoo McDaniel on August 8, 1981 in Greensboro, North Carolina. McDaniel's run was cut short, officially ending at 46 days when he was injured by Abdullah the Butcher during a tag match as he feuded with Butcher and Roddy Piper and was forced to vacate the championship. A tournament was held in Charlotte on October 4th, 1981, ending with Sergeant Slaughter defeating Ricky Steamboat in the final to crown a new U.S. champion. Slaughter turned in the third longest U.S. title reign at that point, holding the belt 229 days before Wahoo McDaniel took the title back on May 21, 1982 in Richmond, Virginia. McDaniel and Slaughter would trade the belt back and forth, with McDaniel only holding the belt 17 days before being attacked by Roddy Piper and Don Morocco prior to a defense against Slaughter. With McDaniel injured and unable to defend, the title was awarded to Slaughter on June 7, 1982 in Greenville. Slaughter kept the belt another 76 days, finally dropping the belt back to Wahoo McDaniel on August 22, 1982 in Charlotte, setting McDaniel off on his third run with the belt lasting 74 days. More than 5 years after Greg Valentine broke Wahoo's leg, he took Wahoo's belt. Valentine took the U.S. title on November 4, 1982 in Norfolk, Virginia. It was then Valentine that entered into a feud with Roddy Piper, leading to Valentine dropping the U.S. title to Piper on April 16, 1983 in Greensboro, and ending his reign at 163 days. Piper only held the belt 15 days before losing it back to Greg Valentine on May 1, 1983 in Greensboro. The referee stopped the match when Piper was bleeding severely from his ear, awarding the match and the belt to Valentine. One of the most violent feuds in wrestling history, Piper vs. Valentine, peaked at Starrcade 83, the first card offered on closed-circuit TV, which was a precursor to pay-per-view. Knowing that, at least in essence, the world would be watching, Piper and Valentine wanted to go the extra mile for their match. Evidently, it was Piper that came up with the idea to make it a dog collar match. Taking logging chains and spiked leather collars, Piper lined the collars with sheep's wool, thinking it would make wearing them easier. What it actually did was give both wrestlers rashes. The match itself was absolutely brutal, with both wrestlers going all out, thinking it was a one-time thing. Little did they know, the powers that be in Mid-Atlantic would book them to repeat the match on the house show circuit. They would continue to have dog collar matches throughout the month of December 1983. The United States Championship would not be on the line in the dog collar matches, but Valentine would retain it into December before dropping the belt to Dick Slater on December 14, 1983 in Greensboro, ending Valentine's reign at 227 days. Slater had a nice run with the belt, losing it after 129 days to Ricky Steamboat, who checked in with his third U.S. title run on April 21, 1984 in Greensboro. Steamboat's 64-day title run led to the culmination of a slow-burning heel turn by the previously popular and respected Wahoo McDaniel. McDaniel defeated Steamboat for the title on June 24, 1984 in Greensboro, but it was not a totally clean victory. Tully Blanchard had interfered in the match, going at McDaniel with a chair while the referee was down. McDaniel ducked and Blanchard hit Steamboat with the chair. McDaniel did dispose of Blanchard, but then seeing Steamboat was unconscious from the chair hit, pinned Steamboat to take the belt. The NWA would step in and strip McDaniel of the belt on July 21, 1984, but did recognize Wahoo as holding the title 27 days. The title remained vacant 78 days until a tournament was held on October 7, 1984 in Charlotte. Wahoo McDaniel would defeat Manny Fernandez in the tournament final to officially begin a fifth title reign that carried things into 1985. McDaniel held the belt another 167 days before dropping the title to Magnum TA on March 23, 1985 in Charlotte. Magnum was the United States champion when changes came for the Mid-Atlantic Territory. The previous year, the World Wrestling Federation had taken over the high-profile World Championship Wrestling time slot on WTBS, while the Georgia Territory was given a time slot early on Saturday morning with Championship Wrestling from Georgia. Just over 8 months later, after ejection from fans and WWF head Vince McMahon butting heads with TBS owner Ted Turner, Mid-Atlantic owner Jim Crockett Jr. stepped in and purchased the World Championship Wrestling time slot. For all intents and purposes, Crockett then merged the Mid-Atlantic and Georgia territories, forming what is most often referred to simply as Jim Crockett Promotions. Magnum's first run with the U.S. title lasted into the summer that first year on WTBS, totaling 120 days, before he dropped the belt to Tully Blanchard on July 21, 1985 in Charlotte. Blanchard held the belt 130 days, losing the title back to Magnum TA on November 28, 1985 at Starrcade in Greensboro in an I Quit steel cage match. Magnum had a long reign of 182 days, which came to an abrupt end. During a contract signing in May 1985 for a match between Nikita Koloff and champion Magnum TA for the U.S. title, Koloff had his uncle Ivan with him, while Magnum had brought his mother. Koloff called Magnum a mama's boy, and said in the Soviet Union, women knew their place. Going on, Koloff said Russian women have more class than stinking American woman, as he gestured toward Magnum's mother. Magnum responded by jumping over the table, before getting beat down by the Russians as the NWA representative Sandy Scott was knocked to the ground, and Magnum's mother looked on helplessly. According to Nikita Koloff, that was Magnum's real mother, who thought the whole thing was real, as she had not been smartened up. A week later, NWA President Bob Geigel met with Magnum on camera to read an official reprimand for the champ from the NWA Board of Directors for conduct unbecoming a champion, noting that there would be no fine or suspension, simply the reprimand, basically a slap on the wrist. Magnum still took offense, asking Bob Geigel what he would do if it were his mother. Geigel said the United States champion is expected to keep himself in good conduct at all times. Magnum responded, "Reprimand this," before hitting Geigel and knocking him to the ground. In a tape statement aired later, Geigel announced the NWA was stripping Magnum TA of the U.S. title, again citing conduct unbecoming a champion. Magnum's title reign officially came to an end on May 29, 1986. Rather than holding a tournament or a single top contenders match, there was a best-of-7 series set up between Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff to crown a new champion. With the series tied at 3 wins each, a match in Philadelphia with Bob Geigel as special referee ended in a no contest, leaving the deciding match to be held in Charlotte during a Mid-Atlantic TV taping on August 23, 1986. Nikita Koloff defeated Magnum TA with some help from Ivan Koloff, Crusher Khrushchev, and a chain to win his first United States Heavyweight Championship. A month later, Koloff defeated National Heavyweight Champion Wahoo McDaniel in a title unification match, as the Mid-Atlantic titles absorbed the titles from the former Georgia territory. A month after that, Magnum's career was suddenly over after his horrific car accident left him with lingering injuries. Koloff sat on a record-breaking reign at the time, holding the belt 328 days, and famously turning babyface at an October 24, 1986 match when he teamed with Dusty Rhodes against Ole Anderson and James J. Dillon. Koloff's long title reign finally came to an end on July 11, 1987 in Greensboro, when he lost the belt to Lex Luger in a steel cage match at the Great American Bash. One of the 4 horsemen at the time, Luger held the championship 138 days before losing it in a steel cage match to Dusty Rhodes at Starrcade in Chicago, Illinois, on November 26, 1987. Dusty took the title into 1988, but his reign was cut short at 141 days. When Tully Blanchard confronted and attacked the still injured Magnum TA during a TV segment, Dusty went after Blanchard with a baseball bat and ended up knocking out NWA President Jim Crockett, earning a 120-day suspension. The title sat vacant for 28 days before a 7-man tournament was held in Houston, Texas on May 13, 1988. New 4 Horsemen member Barry Windham defeated Nikita Koloff in the tournament final to take the title. It was during Windham's run with the belt that Jim Crockett Promotions was sold to Ted Turner, and while still a part of the NWA, the company would take the name World Championship Wrestling, and use of the NWA name would slowly be phased out. 1 title, 1 belt, but 2 different names. Publicly, the championship would be called the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship, but the same title was still recognized as the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. Windham held the title into 1989, a total of 283 days, before dropping it to former 4 Horseman Lex Luger at Chi-Town Rumble in Chicago on February 20th, 1989. Luger held the belt 76 days before dropping it to Michael Hayes on May 7, 1989 in Nashville, Tennessee. Hayes had a little help from Freebird partner Terry Gordy and getting a rare singles title belt. Hayes' run would be a short one, losing the U.S. title back to Lex Luger 15 days later on May 22, 1989 in Bluefield, West Virginia. In his 3rd U.S. title reign, Luger turned in by far the longest reign in the history of the championship and set a record that still stands, Luger held the belt an incredible 523 days, defending against challengers as varied as Tommy Rich, Dick Murdoch, Sid Vicious, and Ric Flair. Luger finally dropped the title at Halloween Havoc on October 27, 1990 in Chicago to former AWA World Champion Stan Hansen. Hansen held the belt 50 days before losing it back to Lex Luger in a Texas bull rope match at Starrcade on December 12, 1990 in St. Louis, Missouri. It was during Luger's fourth term with the U.S. title that the National Wrestling Alliance stopped operating as an active organization. While there was still a board of directors and they continued to recognize an NWA World Champion, all other titles were dropped from NWA recognition. So, the title was now officially and solely the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship. Luger would go on to hold the belt another 210 days, vacating it after he won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. The U.S. title reign officially ended the same night Luger won the world title, July 14, 1991. The title remained vacant until August 25, 1991, when Sting defeated Steve Austin in a tournament final at the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia, as part of the Great American Bash Tour. In his first run with the U.S. title, Sting held the belt for 86 days before dropping it to Rick Rude at Clash of Champions on November 19, 1991, in Savannah, Georgia. Rude had a long run with the belt, holding it over a year until a legit neck injury forced him to vacate the title. There is no exact date Rude officially surrendered the belt, but it would be after around 375 days, which is the second longest U.S. title reign in history. In a Top Contenders match on WCW Saturday Night on January 11, 1993, Dusty Rhodes defeated Ricky Steamboat to fill the vacancy in Atlanta, Georgia. Rhodes' title reign officially ended after 109 days on April 20, 1993 in Montgomery, Alabama, when he lost the title to Rick Rude. However, when Rude gained the pinfall, the ref making the count couldn't see Rhodes got his shoulder up. The WCW Board of Directors declared Rude's victory void, and the title held up. Rude's time with the belt is not recognized as an official title reign. The title remained vacant through most of the summer, with a rematch between Rhodes and Rude finally taking place on August 30, 1993, which aired on WCW Saturday Night on September 11th. Ric Flair, who had been butting heads with Rude recently, came to ringside to offer some commentary on the match. When the referee was knocked down, Rude left the ring to get a chair to use on Rhodes, but Flair ran to the ring and snatched the chair from Rude's hands. This gave Rhodes the opportunity to roll up Rude as the referee recovered and counted the pin. Dusty Rhodes officially began his second reign with the U.S. title, which lasted 119 days and ended in a loss to a future WWE Hall of Famer. Rhodes dropped the title to a still stunning pre-Stone Cold Steve Austin in a best 2 out of 3 falls match at Starrcade in Charlotte, North Carolina on December 27, 1993. Austin took the title into 1984 with a lengthy run of 240 days, dropping the title to Ricky Steamboat on August 24th in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, at that year's Clash of Champions. Steamboat was scheduled to defend against Steve Austin at the 1994 Fall Brawl in Roanoke, Virginia, on September 18th. Due to a back injury, Steamboat was unable to defend, and the United States Championship was then forfeited to Austin, but Austin's night was not over. Thinking he was done for the day, Austin started to leave the ring, but WCW Commissioner Nick Bockwinkel informed him he would have to defend the title that night to fulfill his contractual obligations. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was then introduced as his opponent. Austin protested while Duggan prepared for the match, and the bell rang. Austin turned and was immediately taken down by Duggan, who pinned him in what was officially listed as 35 seconds. Austin's title reign lasted roughly 3 minutes, the shortest in the history of the title. Duggan's reign checked in at an even 100 days before he dropped the belt to Vader at Starrcade in Nashville, Tennessee, on December 27, 1994. Vader held the belt 88 days before being stripped of the title by WCW Commissioner Nick Bockwinkel after Vader attacked and hospitalized Kevin Sullivan's brother Dave Sullivan. Vader officially kept the belt until March 25, 1995. The title remained vacant into the summer, a total of 85 days, before Sting finally filled the vacancy by winning a tournament final over Ming at the Great American Bash in Dayton, Ohio on June 18, 1995. Sting's second U.S. title reign lasted 148 days, coming to an end at a New Japan Pro Wrestling event in Tokyo, Japan, when he lost the belt to Kensuke Sasaki on November 13, 1995. This led into an unusual situation, getting the belt back off Sasaki, who refused to lose in his first and only defense. At Starrcade World Cup of Champions on December 27, 1995 in Nashville, Tennessee, Sasaki defended against One Man Gang. The title match was a dark match and not considered part of the main pay-per-view card. However, it was taped. Two different endings came from the match, one that was shown on WCW Saturday Night that showed One Man Gang defeating Sasaki for the belt. That was an edited ending, as during the actual match, Sasaki kicked out just before the 3 count, and while Gang did grab the belt and start to celebrate, the ref stopped him and told him he only got a 2 count. Japanese audiences were shown the actual ending, which saw Sasaki defeat Gang and retain the championship. The Japanese audience was then told Sasaki chose to relinquish the championship so he wouldn't have to keep leaving Japan to defend the belt. As far as what WCW eventually officially recognized, it was a combination of the two. The U.S. Championship was vacated by Sasaki, but is recognized as being vacant less than 1 day before One Man Gang was awarded the belt. After all that, Gang only held the title 33 days before he dropped the belt to Konnan on January 29, 1996 in Canton, Ohio. Konnan had a nice run of 160 days, dropping the title to Ric Flair at Bash at the Beach on July 7, 1996 in Daytona Beach, Florida. This gave Flair his 6th run with the United States Championship to break a 12-year tie with Wahoo McDaniel for the most U.S. title reigns. Flair held the title into November, when it was announced he would surrender the title due to a shoulder injury, with his run officially ending November 24, 1996 at 140 days. In what was announced as a tournament final at Starrcade in Nashville on December 29, 1996, Eddie Guerrero defeated Diamond Dallas Page to take his first and only United States Heavyweight Championship. Guerrero had a decent run of 77 days before he dropped the belt to Dean Malenko in a no DQ match at the Uncensored pay-per-view in Charleston, South Carolina on March 16, 1997. Malenko also had a decent run with the belt, lasting 85 days before he lost the title to Jeff Jarrett on an episode of Nitro on June 9, 1997 in Boston, Massachusetts. The future WCW and NWA World Champion held the U.S. title for the first time for 73 days, dropping it to Steve Mongo McMichael on August 21, 1997 at Clash of Champions in Nashville during a long-running rivalry between the two. McMichael's reign would be a short one, lasting only 25 days before he lost the belt to Curt Hennig on an episode of Nitro on September 15, 1997 in Charlotte, North Carolina. What turned out to be Hennig's last major singles title run in the U.S. lasted 104 days before he dropped the belt to Diamond Dallas Page at Starrcade in Washington, D.C. on December 28, 1997. DDP took the belt into 1998, losing after 112 days to Raven in a Raven's Rules match, which was essentially a hardcore no disqualification match. Raven took the title on April 19, 1998 at Spring Stampede in Denver, Colorado. Raven would turn out to be something of a transitional champion, losing the U.S. title just 1 day later in Colorado Springs, Colorado to Goldberg on an episode of Nitro. This was during Goldberg's long winning streak and marked the first title of his career. Goldberg officially held the belt 77 days, vacating the title when he won the WCW World Championship from Hollywood Hogan on July 6, 1998. The U.S. title remained vacant until July 20, 1998, when Bret Hart defeated Diamond Dallas Page on Nitro in Salt Lake City, Utah, in a Top Contenders match to crown a new champion, the first U.S. title reign for Hart. Hart only held the title 21 days before losing it to Lex Luger on Nitro in Rapid City, South Dakota, on August 8, 1998. It was the first U.S. title win for Luger in 8 years, but the run was short. Luger dropped the belt back to Bret Hart just 3 days later on an episode of Thunder in Fargo, North Dakota on August 13, 1998. Hart had a tighter grip on the United States Championship his second time around, holding the belt 74 days before he lost it to Diamond Dallas Page on Nitro in Phoenix, Arizona on October 25, 1998. DDP kept the title 35 days, dropping it back to Bret Hart during an episode of Nitro in Chattanooga, Tennessee, in a no disqualification match on November 30, 1998. Hart received considerable help from NWO member The Giant to get the win. Bret's third U.S. title reign lasted 70 days, which at this point was a fairly long run, and came to an end with a little help from a Fox television star. 16 years after he last held the belt, Rowdy Roddy Piper took the U.S. title from Hart on Nitro in Buffalo, New York on February 8, 1999. Piper unknowingly got an assist from Mad TV star Will Sasso, who was in the front row and had been butting heads with Hart after Bret made an appearance on the sketch comedy show. Piper only held the belt 13 days, losing the title to Scott Hall on February 21, 1999 in Oakland, California during Super Brawl 9. Both Disco Inferno and Kevin Nash interfered in the match on Hall's behalf. Hall was legitimately injured and surrendered the title after just 25 days. Ric Flair, who was portraying the WCW president and on-air authority figure, stripped Hall of the title and immediately arranged a tournament to crown a new champion. The tournament final would be part of Spring Stampede in Tacoma, Washington. Scott Steiner defeated Booker T in the tournament final on April 11, 1999, for his first U.S. title win. Steiner would hold the belt 85 days, but a back injury prompted Ric Flair to again strip the champion of the belt, doing so on an episode of Nitro in Atlanta, Georgia on July 5, 1999. Also on July 5, 1999, Flair used his power as the WCW president to handpick a new champion rather than setting up a tournament or a top contenders match. Flair awarded the United States Championship to his son, David Flair, who had been winning some matches thanks to Rick and members of the Four Horsemen. David managed to keep the belt 35 days, but dropped the title on August 9, 1999 to Chris Benoit in Nampa, Idaho, on an episode of Nitro. Benoit only held the U.S. title 34 days before losing clean to Sid Vicious at Fall Brawl in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, on September 12, 1999. Sid was U.S. champion when Vince Russo took over creative for WCW in October 1999. The change to Russo wouldn't be immediately felt surrounding the United States Championship, but it would come soon enough. Sid's U.S. title reign ended at 42 days on October 24, 1999, when he lost the belt to Goldberg at Halloween Havoc in Las Vegas, Nevada. The referee stopped the match because Vicious was bleeding excessively, awarding the win and the belt to Goldberg. Just 1 day later, October 25, 1999, Goldberg dropped the belt to Bret Hart on an episode of Nitro from Phoenix, Arizona. 14 days into Hart's fourth and final time with the U.S. title, he defended in a Texas Tornado ladder match against Sid Vicious, Goldberg, and Scott Hall on an episode of Nitro from Indianapolis, Indiana. Hart made it up the ladder and retrieved the belt. However, an interfering Rick Steiner and special referee Kevin Nash made sure that was not the final result of the match. Nash essentially handed the belt to Scott Hall, ending Hart's reign on November 8, 1999. Hall held the belt 41 days, surrendering it on December 19, 1999, when he suffered a knee injury. Hall was scheduled to face Chris Benoit that night as part of Starrcade in Washington, D.C. Instead, the belt was immediately awarded to Benoit, who then successfully defended against Jeff Jarrett in a ladder match at Starrcade. After all that, Benoit's reign only lasted 1 day when he lost the title to Jeff Jarrett on the December 20th, 1999 episode of Nitro in Baltimore, Maryland, which was also a ladder match. Jarrett carried the United States Championship into the year 2000 with the smell of WCW's final days in the air. At that point, the territories were gone. The World Wrestling Federation was surging thanks to the rise of stars like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Undertaker, and Extreme Championship Wrestling was on the verge of collapse. World Championship Wrestling lost almost $10 million in 1999, and just days into the year 2000, the U.S. Championship signified the state of WCW. The sold-out pay-per-view on January 16, 2000 in Cincinnati, Ohio, was an absolute mess. Part of that mess was the scheduled U.S. title match between champion Jeff Jarrett and challenger Chris Benoit being canceled due to Jarrett having a concussion. It was also announced Jarrett would be stripped of the title, ending his reign at 26 days. 2 days later at Nitro in Columbus, Ohio, WCW Commissioner Kevin Nash awarded the belt back to Jeff Jarrett, basically resetting his title run. It would be another month before he defended it. Jarrett kept the belt another 84 days until the April 10, 2000 edition of Monday Night Nitro in Denver, Colorado. That is when Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff joined forces, so to speak, and WCW's creative, and stripped every champion in the company of their titles. They called it a reboot of WCW. While the product didn't get any better, There were some interesting points in the U.S. title lineage in the last year or so of the company. Scott Steiner filled the title vacancy by defeating Sting in the tournament final on April 16, 2000 in Chicago, Illinois, as part of Spring Stampede. Steiner's second U.S. title reign lasted 84 days and came to an abrupt end on July 9, 2000 at Bassett's Beach in Daytona, Florida. Steiner used the Steiner recliner submission hold on his opponent Mike Awesome, which had been banned by WCW. The new WCW commissioner Ernest Miller then stripped Steiner of the U.S. Championship. The title would be vacant 9 days when Lance Storm defeated Mike Awesome in a tournament final on an episode of Nitro in Auburn Hills, Michigan on July 18, 2000. Storm would refer to the title as the WCW Canadian Heavyweight Championship, but of course that was never officially recognized. Storm turned in a long reign for the time period, but there is an interesting side note. Unofficially, Storm held the title 66 days before he dropped the belt to Terry Funk in Amarillo, Texas on September 22, 2000. This was not officially recognized by WCW at the time, but has been retroactively recognized by WWE, so I will include it in the lineage here. Plus, I just think it was a cool thing for them to do. I haven't heard any stories as to why the title change took place, but I think it was simply certain people in WCW seeing the writing on the wall, and knowing WCW might not be around much longer, they gave a nod of respect to Funk by having him take the title for a second time in his hometown of Amarillo. At least that's what I like to think happened. This came almost 25 years after he became just the third wrestler to hold the belt in his first U.S. title win. Funk dropped the belt back to Storm a day later, September 23, 2000 in Lubbock. Both of these title changes came at house shows and were never mentioned on television. Storm held the title 36 more days before losing it to General Rection, that's Hugh Morris, on October 29, 2000 in Las Vegas, Nevada at Halloween Havoc. The General had to defeat both Storm and Jim Duggan in a handicap match to win the belt. It also started the streak of short title reigns. Rection held the belt 12 days, losing it back to Lance Storm on Nitro in London, England on November 10, 2000. That marked the first and only time the title changed hands in Europe. Storm held the title another 16 days before losing it back to General Rection at the Mayhem pay-per-view in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on November 26, 2000. It would be General Rection that officially took the title into the 21st century. Rection kept the title 49 days when he dropped the belt to the Franchise, which was Shane Douglas, and a First Blood chain match in Indianapolis, Indiana on January 14, 2001. This was part of the Sin pay-per-view, as WCW had a plan to have a pay-per-view for the 7 Deadly Sins, but they wouldn't come close to getting through all of them. Franchise held the title 22 days before dropping the belt to Rick Steiner on February 5, 2001 in Tupelo, Mississippi, on an episode of Nitro. Steiner actually brought some stability to the title, holding it for 41 days. Steiner would be the last wrestler to lose the United States Championship before World Championship Wrestling mercifully went out of business, so to speak. Steiner dropped the belt to Booker T on March 18, 2001, in the last WCW pay-per-view, Greed, held in Jacksonville, Florida. 8 days later, Booker T faced WCW World Champion Scott Steiner in a winner-takes-all match with both titles on the line. Booker won the match, which also happened to take place on the final Monday Night Nitro in Panama City Beach, Florida. That same night, it was announced on Nitro by Vince McMahon that WCW had been purchased by the World Wrestling Federation. While the WWF now owned its only real competition, the original plan was to keep WCW as a separate company. Therefore, the title continued to be referred to as the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship. Booker T would continue to hold both the WCW World Championship and the U.S. Championship as legalities were ironed out and ownership shifted to the WWF. The U.S. title sat idle in Booker's hands for the next 4 months. Finally, on an episode of SmackDown taped on July 24, 2001 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Booker T's U.S. title reign came to an end at 128 days. Booker, along with Stephanie McMahon, awarded the championship to Chris Kanyon. This was done at Stephanie's request, as Booker was still the WCW World Champion at the time, and they were all now part of the Alliance faction. And Kanyon held the title 46 days before dropping the belt to Tajiri who made use of his mysterious green mist on the September 10th, 2001 episode of Raw in San Antonio, Texas. Tajiri only held the belt 13 days before losing it to fellow ECW alumnus Rhino at the Unforgiven pay-per-view in Pittsburgh on September 23, 2001. Rhino had a 29-day run with the title, losing it to Kurt Angle on the October 22, 2001 episode of Raw in Kansas City, Missouri. Angle was the last wrestler to lose the WCW United States Championship, dropping the belt after 21 days to Edge on the November 12, 2001 episode of Raw in Boston, Massachusetts. Officially, Edge held the title 6 days, defending the championship against WWF Intercontinental Champion Test in a unification match at Survivor Series on November 18, 2001. Smothered in symbolism and irony, Survivor Series that year was held in Greensboro, North Carolina, the site of 16 United States Championship title changes, including the first in 1975 when Johnny Valentine defeated Harley Race. Edge won the match and both titles, with the U.S. Championship being absorbed into the Intercontinental Championship and effectively ceasing to exist. In 2003, what had become World Wrestling Entertainment did reactivate the United States Championship. However, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there were several other United States Championships recognized around the country. That includes in what was then known as the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. The then WWF had the United States Championship from 1960 until 1971. When WWF U.S. Champion Pedro Morales won the WWF Championship on February 8, 1971, the title was vacated. The title was never filled again, though it was never officially deactivated and was just left in limbo. Eventually I will be doing WWE titles as well, and it only seems right to put the WWE United States Championship with its WWF predecessor to recognize that history. So for this video, the lineage ends with Edge in 2001. I hope you enjoyed this title history video. I've gotten a couple of requests for this title, and it was a lot of fun going back and looking at what became the most prestigious U.S. title in the country. If you'd like to see more title lineage videos, you can click the playlist on the end screen, or check out one of the other videos on the channel. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, not necessarily in that order. And I will see you next time.